All right. Good evening, everyone. Once again, good afternoon, good morning, irrespective of where you are joining us from. So we are going to start our today hands-on project-based data visualization masterclass for second class. So not to delay and not to keep our facilitator waiting for so long. So we already have Ahmed Oyelowo on the call who is walking us through the another session of today's class. Ahmed, I don't know if you can hear me.
Hello.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. So
Thanks.
you can, yeah, all right, man. You can just share your screen from here to take over from there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you are ready for today's class, and I hope you can hear me clearly as well. So please, let's make sure that we are in this class. Make sure to use the chats area. If you have questions, just send them into the chat. If you have things you want to talk about, anything you want to talk about as far as it's about Power BI and data visualization, you can always drop them in the chat area. Once in a while, I'll make sure that I check what's going on in there. So welcome to day 2 of the master class. Once again, my name is Ahmed Oyelowo, and I'm hoping that you were part of us on the first day of the class as well. So I'll just quickly run through what we did in the first class, just a very quick introduction of what we did in the first class. So the first class was about an introductory level of what Power BI is. Then we were able to run a little bit of demo by importing some files from a folder inside of Power BI. So from today, we'll be more hands-on today, and we're going to be looking at something, but if I show you what we'll be looking at, we'll be working mostly on lessons 3 and hopefully some part of lesson 4 within the 1 hour time frame that we have. So before I proceed, I'll quickly go to my whiteboard, and I just want you to have a picture in your mind of what Power BI is about, because this picture will always help you and it always guides you to have a good understanding of what you are trying to work with. So typically, every single data reporting process, regardless of whether you are using Power BI or whether you are using Tableau, or whether you are using Excel, you are using Python, you are using R, whatever case or whatever tool you are actually using, you will typically go through the same processes. And this is what your process basically look like. Just forget about what my handwriting is going to look like and whether I can draw or not. So you are typically going to have something like this that represents what the host of your data looks like, meaning that you have a place where you are going to collect data from. So from your data collection spots, you will typically have something that is going to transfer that data into somewhere like this. Now, this somewhere that you are transferring the data to is more or less like a place where you get to on the data in terms of if the data is enough, then you can basically pass through this stage. But if the data is not good enough, then you want to work on it. You want to kind of like make it good and stuff like that. Then from that point, you are going to have to send it to somewhere that you will do some analytics or that you will do some visualization, as the case may be. And then from this point, yet again, it doesn't end here, because you are still going to have to share your reports with people. So this is really the picture of what every reporting process or every analytical process is going to look like. You collect data from point A, then you will have a pipeline that is going to send it into point B, where you get to transform the data. Then after transforming the data, you are going to load it into point C, where you carry out your analytics, your visualization. Then from point C, obviously, you have to share the results of whatever work you have done with certain people, and that is point D. Now, every single thing from moving from point A to point B to point C and point D now requires some special skill set, right? So the skill set that you are going to need from point A to point B is something that we refer to as an ETL skill set. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load, and I'm sure we'll talk about something like that in the first class as well. And the reason why you need that is because the data from the original source that you are picking it from might not be in a state where you can use it for analysis. So you need your ETL skills, you need your data cleaning skills, you need your data transformation skills for you to be able to, collect the data and work on it very well in point B. And then after you have worked on it in point B, that means you have done E to extract from point A. And then on point B, you are doing T to transform it. Then you will load it into point C, right? A, extract, B, transform, C, load, right? You load into point C. Now, once you load into point C now, you will now have to do something about your data after loading. You need to do something that we refer to as modeling. This is where you get to model your data. And then you also need to do your visualization right here on point C as well. So after you've done ETL, then you need to do model. And after you have done modeling, then you need to visualize. Then when you visualize and you've created a report, then you are now going to share that report with a couple of people. And that point we say you are basically managing something now. Or you can say you are deploying your solution. So this is the point where you get to deploy and you have to choose different options of the things you want to do. So in today's class, we have to move somewhere between ETL and modeling, depending on the amount of time that we have today. So let's jump straight into it. So lessons 3 and lessons 4 is what we want to focus on. And obviously we have to look at Power Query functionalities. Then how do you import into the Power Query editor? How do you format? How do you work with dates? And how do you manage to change your data sources if the original data source has changed to something else? Now, don't worry if any of these things is not clear right now. By the time we get into the demos, you are going to have a clearer understanding. So hopefully you still have the folder that I shared with you in the first class. So there's a folder that contains all the data set that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to switch over to my Power BI screen. And you know how to bring in data, very simple and very straightforward. Click on get data right here. You have different options of where you want to pick data from. So in this case, I just want to pick data from a simple Excel file. So if I click on Excel workbook, I will go to DSN folder. Make sure you get that folder. It's in the Google Classroom. Then I'll go to my transform data folder and I want to pick number 2 file data sets. So the objective of this exercise right now is to explain how Power Query looks like to you and to also explain how to work with Power Query. So I want to make sure that I'm able to work with time as much as possible. Now these data sets that I'm connecting to, I'm not sure if this is what I want. So let me just check again. So data, Excel. Okay, so I want to connect to number 1 file rather, not number 2 file. So number 1 file is sample data, and I'm going to click on open. So remember the process, remember the picture. You have your data from somewhere. So point A, in this case, is the Excel file, isn't it? Right? Clicking get data in Power BI is me starting to do the ETL. Because I want to collect data from point A and I want to send it to point B. Point B, in this case, is once I choose that from that my Excel file in my point A, I want the others worksheet from there. And the moment I click transform data right now, you are going to see that this is going to send me into a different environment, which if you check on the top right-hand side, you are going to see something called Power Query Editor, right? So the Power Query Editor is our point B. And this is where you get to do data transformation and data cleaning before you load into your Power BI. So our focus now is going to be on this Power Query Editor. Just in case you're probably wondering that my Power Query is different from what you have in your Power Query. Not to worry, I'm going to explain why you have why we have differences in what our Power Query environment looks like. So within 2 minutes, I'm trying to time myself very accurately. So if you are used to any Microsoft application, you know that you always have some tabs at the top. You can call them menu, you can call them tabs at the top like this. So what these things basically do is they help you to house the different control buttons that you have. In this case, in my Power Query now, I have control buttons everywhere. Some I'll find on home menu, some I'll find on transform, some I will find on add column, and so on and so forth, right? So the ribbon is where the controls are. So if you see home as a menu tab, all the controls are placed inside the ribbon, okay? And the home tab is just typically somewhere that you always find the most useful things that you use in class, right? I mean, I say class, rather. The most useful things that you will use in your Power Query, the one that you always go back to home, right? Nowhere like home. So that's what you find on the home tab. The transform tab is where you get to see many of the things that have to do with transforming your data. When you transform data, it simply means you are taking your data from the way it looks originally and you want to make some changes to it. Think about all the pictures that you have seen before and after. So if you see a picture of before and you see a picture of after, a transformation has happened. So the same thing applies to Power Query. So Power Query is the environment where you get to take something from an initial state to an after state, right? So and most of the things you do from taking from initial to after states, you find under transform tab. Then the add column tab is where you have controls that allow you to add more columns to your data. Anything that you click on this add column tab will always create a new column for you, and we'll get to see it later. Now, the view tab is where you control what you are viewing in terms of the interface looks like in your Power Query. And this is where we probably have differences in what our Power Query looks like, because you will see that in my own view tab, I have a couple of buttons that I have ticked, which you probably don't have. So for example, if I untick formula bar, then you see something has gone. And if I also untick column distribution from here, you see another thing is gone as well. So at this point, we'll most likely have the same kind of view, right? But then, okay, people say they don't have the file in Google Class. You probably want to check. I'm just going to share it right here. So if you are connected from your computer, you can have the current file I'm working with. All right. So now we're probably on the same page. Meanwhile, you want to make sure you have your formula bar ticked. So you have to come to where I am. So you have to tick your formula bar at least. You need to have that guy showing right there. You probably don't need it, but you need to have it ticked, okay? Then the other things that you have to have ticked as well inside Power Query, at least you should have your column profile ticked. And I'll explain, sorry, not column profile, column quality, you should have that ticked as well. So why do you want to have column quality ticked? Because if you check at the top of every single column here, you will see that I have some statistics that shows me for this particular column, how many percentage of my data is valid, how many percentage is error, and how many percentage is empty. What you are really guiding against is ensuring that your error is always 0%. It doesn't matter how many percent of valid is, right? So valid is just a function of what is left after error and empty. So for example, you could have 2% empty. If you have 2% empty, then you're going to have 98% valid. That's not a problem. The problem is don't have your error increase from 0%. Your error must always remain 0%, right? So that's make sure you have these two things ticked. I'll come to explain what the two of them are much later. So now once you have your data in your Power Query environment like this, you are going to notice that on the right-hand side, you have a panel for query settings. What the query settings panel or pane is meant for is to show you a list of steps for every single transformation that you are doing. And that's because Power Query uses a language called the M language. M is for mash up. M is for mash up. So Power Query uses the M language to basically carry out transformation. So if you check my formula bar, everything you see here basically is M language. You don't necessarily need to write M, but you need to have an understanding of what's happening at least, okay? So for every single transformation you do inside here in Power Query, you will always have an M written for you. At the same time, you will always have an additional step that is going to apply to your transformation. Now, the easy way to work with Power Query is that it is completely intuitive. And I use this terminology called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So for example, if I go to home now and I say remove rows, you see I have options. So if I want to delete some rows now, these are the options I have for deleting rows. So what I see is exactly what I get. So for example, if I click on remove top rows now, then I see another thing again, which is, okay, how many rows do I want to remove? So if I say I want to remove 3 rows, I click OK, right? So what I see is what I get. So once I click OK now, then you're going to see that prior to now, I had 23 rows of data. If you check bottom left, you are going to see there. Now I have 20 rows. So Power Query is really straightforward and easy to use. And it does have over 380 transformations that you can do in Power Query. By transformation now, I've just done one transformation. My original data set had 23 rows. Now I've removed 3, the top 3. So now I've carried out a transformation on my data by removing 3 top rows, right? So it's really straightforward to you. There are more than 380 things like that that we can do. I've just done one. So you see that it is completely impossible for us to run through every transformation scenario that is possible. But what you need to know is that right here at the top of each of your menu options, every single button that you see here carries out one type of transformation or the other. And remember, what you see is what you get. Also remember, there are up to 380 transformations. So if there is a transformation you need to do on your data, then you should know that there has to be one option out of 380 that can at least do that transformation for you. You just need to find where it is. You typically want to start from the Home tab. You don't find what you want to do. You go to Transform tab. You most likely find something here. But if you don't find it, then you go to Add column and so on and so forth. You need to be familiar with each of these things so that at the end of the day, you know where most of those things are. And the only way you can be familiar with it is to go through them one by one. And if you see, any of these buttons that has a drop-down arrow tells you that you have options. You have a list of options under that particular button. So for example, if I go to remove columns, you see there is small triangle on the button for remove columns. So if I click on the drop down, you see I have options. It's either I remove columns or I remove other columns. Remember again, what you see is what you get. Columns and remove other columns. What do you think is going to happen if I click remove columns right now? What will happen? So I'm waiting for my answers. What you see is what you get. It will remove the column selected. Okay. Yeah, that is what if I use remove columns. But if I use remove other columns, then it's going to leave this one and it will remove all the other ones. Okay, 380. I won't be able to run through everything. Right? Somebody says, what is the M in the M language? M stands for mashup. I don't think it's really important what the M stands for. It's just a language that allows you to kind of like transform data. Okay. So if I use remove column, it will remove this one I have selected. If I use remove others, it will remove all the other columns that we have. Okay. So you see also that once I remove the top 3 columns the other time, I had one new step applied in my apply steps list, which is remove stop rows. So every time I click a button like that, something will always happen. Every time I click a button, then you always see that I always have a new step applied. So for example, let me go and remove this column right now. So remove columns, and I use the first option, remove column. You see, I'll have a new transformation step right here. Now you need to understand that in Power Query, you cannot undo. You can't use Control Z. You cannot use Control Z in Power Query. So if you make a mistake, the option you have is to come right here to your apply steps and delete the step. That's one option you have. The other option you have is some steps are going to give you an option to edit the step. So for example, if you check on the apply steps area, you will see that some of them have some settings icon beside them. So the ones that have settings icon are the ones that you can actually edit. So for example, I removed order date column. I feel like it's a mistake. I shouldn't have removed order date. I should probably have removed first name. I can't necessarily undo that step, except I delete the step right here. Okay, so once I delete, you see the order date is back. Let me remove it back. So remove columns, remove columns. I've removed it again. So now let's assume that I wasn't supposed to remove order date. I was supposed to remove maybe ship mode, for example. Then I can't really edit the step. And that's why I said, let's have our formula bar opened. And that's why I also say you don't need to know the M language, but you need to know how to work with it somehow. Because right there inside the formula, you can already see something that points to order date. And if my transformation wasn't good, supposed to remove order date, it was supposed to remove ship mode, I would just simply come here and change this from order date to ship mode. You must also know that the M language is case sensitive. So you must always use things exactly how they are typed, right? So if I had used the small m now, for example, like this, then you see that I'm going to have an error because the ship mode column uses the capital letter M. So I need to go back to capital M, like that, right? To have the correct thing. So you see that if you want to edit a step, first of all, you see you cannot undo, right? You have an option. Either you delete the step or you edit it. Now, if you want to edit, some steps already provide you with an option to edit, which I'm going to show you. Some steps don't provide you with the option to edit. The steps that give you option to edit, they will always have the settings icon right there. That means you can edit that step. If it doesn't have it, then your option is to try to look at the formula and see if it is easy enough for you to make a transformation. Okay? Now, let's go to the step that you can edit. I removed top 3 rows earlier. Let's assume that I wasn't supposed to remove top 3. I was supposed to remove top 5, for example. All I have to do is go right back to that particular step, right there. Then I can do a right click on the step and select Edit Settings. So select edit settings, it will give me back that dialog box. And from here, I can change from 3 to 5, and I can click OK. Right? So now I've removed 5 rows. Remember before, after removing 3, so now I'm going to have 18 rows. If you check bottom left of my screen, you see I now have 18 rows removed. Okay? So once again, typically transforming data in Power Query is always as simple and as straightforward as possible. You just need to know that what you see is what you get. You need to know that there are up to 380 transformations. If there is something you need to do, then you have to check for it somewhere at the top like this. Now, one other thing to also add is that transformations can be of 2 types. One type is to transform a single column. Another type, or let's say, is to transform columns. So I can be transforming this column, for example, or I can be transforming maybe 2 columns at the same time. So if I select this and I hold Control to click on the first name column, that means I have the 2 of them highlighted at the same time. I'm transforming these 2 columns. So one type of transformation, you can be transforming columns, or you can be transforming the entire table at once. So if you are transforming columns, instead of going to look for something you want to do right here at the top, transform the column. So for example, if I right click on the column now, you see I already have an option for remove. Okay, so the easy way to transform data is, if you are transforming columns, then just right click on the column. If there are more than one, select all of them together and do a right click at the top of any one of them. You see options to what you can do. Now, the other type of transformation is what again? What's the other type of transformation? I said 2 things. You can either transform columns or you can transform what? Send to chat. What's the other one? Let me know in chats. What's the other transformation that you can do if you are not transforming columns? Thank you. You may be transforming the entire table. So if you are transforming the entire table as well, the best way to find what you want to do, like the right clicking that we saw for columns, is to check on the top left of your Power Query. You see one tiny table icon there that has a drop down. You see small triangle, it shows options. That's what it means. So if I click on that small table, I will see a list of options of things I could do. So for example, when I removed top 5 rows the other time, do you agree that those top 5 rows about column is basically about the entire table? So instead of me going to look for where to find it, home, probably take a lot of time trying to look for where to remove the top rows. The easy way for me to do that is, since I'm transforming something that will affect the entire table at once, I will just come right here to this table, click on that drop down, and you see that I should have an option to remove top rows right there. Okay, so those are your options for ease of transformation. Right? Now, I'm going to show you a couple of transformations that you can do in Power Query as well in the next 5 minutes. But let me see first what we've been able to talk about. So the Power Query editor functionalities is what we are currently discussing right now. We've already imported data into Power Query editor. Now we want to format data in Power Query editor. Then I will show you how to work with dates. Right? So right now, I'll be doing some things inside Power Query, but first I need to go back to what my data looked like before I tampered with it. There were 2 transformations I did. Those are the last 2 steps I will find here. I could delete them one by one by clicking on the X mark to remove this and remove that. But then if I probably have like, maybe I've done like 15, you know, it's not going to be possible for me to start, not like it's impossible, but it will be wise for me to start removing 15 one by one. So one easy way to quickly remove, as far as we know all the things we want to remove, right, is stay from the first one. Be on the first one that starts the deletion. I mean, the deleting that you want to do up to the end. Right click on that one, and you're going to see an option that says delete until end. So once I click on that delete until end, it's going to warn me. The only thing that usually gives you is delete will warn you, because delete is a very powerful thing. So once I delete like this, then I've deleted the two things that I've done all at once. If I've attached that data set to the chart, if you are not connected with your computer, then you won't see it. You have to be connected with your computer to see the data set I'm using. Okay, and you probably need to check the down section in the Google Drive. I mean, in the Google Classroom for you to see all of these files. Okay. All right. So, in terms of checking what your data looks like, one thing that you must always do once you bring in data into Power Query is every single column of your data must have a defined data. Now having to choose whether this one is a date, or this one is a text, or this one is a number, just type. You type date, you type date, and leave like that. When you type decimal numbers in Excel, you type decimal numbers and you leave it like that. Okay, that's how Excel works. But in Power Query, every column must have a defined data type. So for example, this column contains dates. That means this column must be set to a data type of date. This column contains texts. So this column must be set to data type of text. If I scroll right, I have this column that contains some decimal numbers. This column must be set to decimal number. This one has whole numbers. This column must be set to whole numbers. So every single column like this in Power Query must have a defined data type. And you must confirm, you must verify that the data types are actually accurate. Okay, that's interesting. So how do you confirm that your data types are correct? What do you do? Easy. Come to Transform tab and then start clicking your columns one by one. Other dates, you see data type here. It shows you that, okay, this is a date. Awesome. Click on Shift Mode. This text, correct? Click on first name. Text, correct? One by one like that. If I click on sales, I should see sales as decimal number. That's correct. Okay. Now, you really don't want to click one by one like that. If you check, just before the names of each of your columns, you have an icon over there. So that icon represents a visual cue to know what type of column or what type of data that column contains, right? So if you see this one, it has a calendar icon. That means it's a date column. This one has ABC. That's a text column. If you scroll to where you have your numbers, you see 1.2. That's the decimal number column. And when you see 1, 2, 3, that's a whole number column. Okay. Now, in the event where you need to make a change to the column data type, what do? You have options. Option 1, click on the drop down where the decimal number column, and I want to assume that we don't want it to be a decimal number, we want it to remain as whole number. We don't care about the decimal points. Option 1, come here to where you have the data type and select the right one. I can just come here and click whole number. Option 2, you know what option 2 is. Tell me you know what option 2 is, isn't it? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to transform this column. That means what? I don't have to come up here. I can do a right click and I will see change type. Then I can select whole number, option 2. Option 3, I can actually click on the 1.2 itself, that icon, the visual cue itself. You can click on it and you see a list of them. Now, the good thing with this clicking is this already shows you the different data types that you have and what visual cue each one of them is carrying, so that when you see the cue the next time, you know what this is talking about, all right? So I could use this one now to change it to a whole number. What you see is what you get. Because it was already set to decimal number, then I'm going to get a warning like, okay, are you trying to replace the type that was originally set, or you want to leave that type the way it is and just create a new transformation below? That's to add a new step. I'll just select replace current. So once I click on replace current like this, then you see it's going to change to a whole number. So what happens if I had used the other option? So if I change this to decimal number, it's trying to warn me. If I had clicked add new step, then you see that I will have an extra step before that transformation happens. Okay, that's why I needed to use what? I needed to use replace current at that point in time. So that's how you change your column data type, right? So formatting data and working with it. So that's the first thing you need to do, making sure your column data types are accurate. Then another type of formatting you may do as well. So if you come to your transform data, you will see that if you have a date column, you will always have, okay, let me put it this way. Every single transformation button that you have in Power Query has a group. That means they are grouped into different functions. For example, there's a group called table, which means all these things are going to work on the entire table. There is a group for any column. So all these things can work on any column. So for example, I may want to rename this column, right? From order date to just date. I'm going to click on rename here, and it will allow me to type date right there, isn't it? So all these ones, they are going to work on any column. Just like our changing of data type, we can change data type of any column. Now, you see a group that has text column. That means all these transformations are going to work on a column that is a text column. For example, if I come to first name, I have format and I can make it uppercase. That means I want my first name to show in uppercase. There are other things. The most useful things under your format are actually things like clean and trim. So trim is when you have extra spaces, and clean is when your data really looks funny and it has some very special characters that you can't read, right? That's when you use clean. You can use at prefix. So for example, now, let's assume that they are all Misters, for example. And I really don't want the names to just show as Daniel, Adam. I want to see Mr. Daniel, Mr. Adam, something like that. Under format, I could say add prefix, and the prefix I want to add is Mr. And click OK, and you see they will all come with Misters, like that. I could also do extract. So let's assume that the original data set had come with Mr. this, Mr. that, and I don't want the Mr. to show. I just want the original names to show alone. I could use the extract right here. And what exactly do I want to extract? I don't want the Mr. I want only the names after. That means I want to extract the text after the delimiter. The delimiter now is the Mr. So anyway, it says Mr. That's my delimiter. That's what I want to use as my point for extraction. So I'm going to say extract text after delimiter. And what's my delimiter going to be? It has to be Mr. Remember, M is case sensitive, right? So if I click OK, you see I have back exactly what I wanted to have. Okay. Now this is because I'm currently working on what? I'm working on a text column. If I go to a number column like sales, then you see that because the number column, there are some specific transformations that are 100% for numbers, and you see options right here. For example, let's assume that all of these sales are in thousands. Maybe the person, instead of entering 264,000, bad example. Let's assume that these sales are in dollars and we want to convert them into naira. So we need to multiply by 560. So I'm going to come to standard right here, say multiply by 560 and click OK. So now I've converted it into naira. Okay, because it's a number column, then and the transformation I wanted to carry out is a number specific transformation. You know, I can't multiply category because it's text. I can multiply the number. So once I click on the column, I can always come to the number section right here. I can use the option for the transformation. Right? Now let's go to the date column. So I click on this date column. Obviously, you have a section for date and time right here. Now, because I've selected dates, then some transformations are date specific. For example, I can click on the drop down for this date now and say, you know what? The date is not really important to me. All I want to see is the year. Then I'm going to come right here to year and I'll select year. Then it's going to show me as year and clean the date, right? So let me delete that and try something else. So I could use the date again and say, you know what I really care about is the month. So I will come to month. And if I just click month like this, what you see is what you get. If I just click month, it will give me something that I may not like, right? So this is what it gives me, month 10, month 11. And you think, no, now I want January, February, March. That means I've chosen the wrong option. I'm going to delete that step. What I should have used is come to date, go to month, and select name of month. That way, I'm going to have the names of the months shown. All right? What next? So transformation is really easy. Now, most of the things you have under transform tab, like I said, is going to affect many of the transformations that you will be doing in Power Query. For add column, anything you do on this column, on this tab, will always create a new column for you in Power Query. So all those things you just saw now, you see they are also here. You see from text, you see from number, you see from date and time. So for example, instead of transforming this column to, instead of transforming that column into name of the month, I may want to keep the column, isn't it? And just create a separate column that has the name of the month. That means I need to be in add column tab. Then I will come to the date right here. And I'm going to say month, and I'm going to say name of month. Now, when you click this, every single new column that you add will always go to the extreme end. So you always find it here as month name, right? Now, somebody may want to ask, what if I want to carry this column away from here? You have two options. You can drag. And when you drag like this, you see that I have a new step, reorder columns. Every single transformation you do, will always record a new step for you. So I have a new step, reorder columns. I can use that to drag and drag until I get to where I want to go. Or I could do a right click, and I'm going to see an option to move. And I can start moving left one by one. Or I could just jump to the beginning. Like this. So this sends it to the beginning, and then maybe I could from here drag it and place it right here. Okay. So that's how you work with specific, transformation on specific types of columns that you have. Okay. Now let's quickly take a look at managing and changing your data sources. So what am I going to do? I'm first of all going to assume that my transformation is done right now. So I will go back home and I'm going to click close and apply. Assuming my transformation is done. Okay. Then I will now go to my folder. I'm going to go to folder right here. And I want to open transform data. This is the one I connected to. Control X to cut it and take it somewhere else. So I'm moving it away from the original source and I'm placing it somewhere else. Now, if I try to refresh my Power BI, so you see refresh button right here, I'm going to have an error. Why am I having an error? I will have an error because the source of the data I connected to earlier has changed. Now I'm trying to refresh my data and then it can no longer find it in the place I pointed to, right? That means I'm going to have to change the source of my data. How do I change the source of my data? I'll show you a couple of options. Option one is you need to go back into Power Query. How do you go back to Power Query? You go back to transform data. So I can come here to click transform data. This will take me back to Power Query. Then you see that even in Power Query, I'm already seeing errors. Transform data. Remember, all you are doing currently is ETL, extract, transform, and load. You are extracting from somewhere before transformation starts. So your extract is always your first step. So if I go to my apply steps here, you will see that my first step is source. And the good thing is, without even teaching you, you know how to change it. Isn't it? You know how to change the source. Because I've told you earlier that some steps will have the settings icon for you to edit. Now my source has changed and I want to edit the source. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say edit settings. It will give back this dialog box where I can use to browse and go back to select where it is. You see, it's no longer here. I've moved it to this place. And I'm going to click open and click OK. Now, if I close and apply, and I click refresh, you see that my refresh will work smoothly and successfully. That's option one. Option two, for changing. Before I show you option two, I'll go back to my Power Query first. I'm going to just duplicate the query. I will replicate the query many times, right? I will just right click on the query on this left and I will duplicate. I'll duplicate it like 10 times. 10 times. Because when I duplicate it 10 times, you probably will not understand this second option that I'm about to show you. Say I'm stressing you. So let's have it in 10 places. Now think, what you see is what you get. I have 10 queries. All of them, I just duplicated them. Like copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Once I copy and paste, you see that all the steps is the same copy and paste. For the first one, all the steps, because I copied it, the steps will be repeated for the second one as well, isn't it? Now, if I apply now, I'm going to have like 10 tables. So if I check on my fields area, I should see like 10 tables. You see, I have plenty tables. All of them have the same source. That source, I'm going to use it to cause trouble. It's right here. On X to remove it from there. Put it back here. Control V. Then go back to my Power BI and refresh, errors, exit it. But the good thing is, you know how to change it. So what do? Go back to Power Query, transform data. Ahmed has shown us how to change it. So I'll go to source, right click, edit settings, browse to the new place. Transform data here, here. This one, click OK. This one is done. Awesome. Number 2, source, click, edit settings, browse, select, open, OK, done. Go to number 3. Of course, you know, I'm not going to do this, right? I'm not going to do this. So that's where option 2 comes in. Option 2 is from your home in Power Query, you have a button for data source settings. What this button does is it will give you a list of all the places you are connected to. So, for example, I do have 10 queries. They are all connected to one place. So, if I open data settings now, I'm only going to see, for some reason, I have 2, which is fine because I've changed the first 3, isn't it? I've changed the first 3. So I have the first 3 in one place. The remaining ones is what you see. So you see that I basically have 2 now. I just need to find out which one is the correct one now. So this first one, let me just go. So if I go to the second one is the one that is inside transform data. So that's where the data is right now. Data right now is in transform data. So this one, the wrong one. So I will select it and I will click change source. Then I'm going to browse and I'm going to select here, you see, inside transform data, click open, click OK. And see that they are now all inside that transform data, and I will just click close. Now, all of them at once will change successfully and they are all good. If I go to home, close and apply, if I hit refresh now, everything will be fine, no errors. Okay. So that's your 2 options for changing data sources. You can either one by one from the source step, or you can use the data source settings button in Power Query. Now you see that data source button in Power Query. So if I click transform now, this is the second option I use, data source settings, right? You really don't have to come to Power Query to do that, okay? You can stay right here. Instead of going into Power Query, just click on the drop down on transform data and select data source settings from here. It will give you the same option. So you don't need to go to Power Query to use the second option. So just tell me the option you prefer out of the 2, option 1 or option 2. All right, let me see. All right, so lesson 3, pretty much done, right? We still have a couple of minutes. So let me quickly take, of course, so we know we've done something good on Power Query. I know the last time I did promise to drop some videos. We'll talk about that probably in the last 5 minutes of the class. We use that to discuss the last 5 minutes, so we'll know how to proceed from here. So now let me take a look at combining tables in Power Query. So everybody prefers option 2. You see, nobody likes to sleep and face the other side. Don't let us all face the same side. Let some people like option 1. Don't let us all like option 2, please. Let some people like option 1. So let me share a new file with you now that we use to demo the next thing. Append queries, file number 3. So I've shared file number 3 in chat. You can pick it up if you are connected from your PC. So let me delete all of these guys, all of you. Go back home, transform, then highlight all of them and press delete. Now, I am already in my Power Query editor. I can always still bring in data from here. Our usual way for bringing data is when we are in Power BI, we click Get Data. We select somewhere, we click Transform, and then that opens Power Query for us. Once you are in Power Query already, you can still bring in data. All you have to do is use New Source, or you can use Recent Sources. Okay? Now, the file I want to work with now, I'll just quickly open it up in Excel. Append Queries file. So I'll show you what we're trying to achieve. Okay, don't worry, the last 5 minutes, we'll take a look at the Google Classroom and see what's happening. So you see that on this Excel now, I have 3 worksheets. Corporate, home office, consumer, and they have technically the same type of data. It's like having files, maybe sales, for example, January sales, February sales, March sales, something like that, okay? You know, at the end of the day, you need to combine everything together into one single file, okay? Now, when you want to do something like that, that's when we say you want to append the data or you want to append the queries. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to bring in this file to Power BI, and we're going to use Power Query to append the 3 worksheets into one single worksheet. So, into my Power BI or Power Query, new source, Excel workbook. Number 3, append queries. File. I want this one. Append queries. I have 3 worksheets there. These are the 3. I want all of them. So tick, tick, and tick, and okay. These are my queries, the 3 files. I want to combine them all into one. So from my home, if I go to the extreme right, under the group for combine, I see append queries, and I'm going to use what you see is what you get. If I do append queries now, that means I want to join or I want to add consumer and corporate to home office because I have home office selected right now. So if I use append queries, that means I want to add the other 2 to this one. If I use append queries as new, that means I'm going to generate a new query that will have the combination of the 3 of them. So I prefer to use append queries as new right now. What you see is what you get. How many queries do I want? I have 3, so I can't use 2. I need to use 3 or more. So I click on 3 or more. What you see is what you get. On the left, I have available tables. On the right, I have tables to append. In my tables to append, I already have home office there. I just know that I need to add consumer and corporate. I can click on consumer, click add. Click corporate, click add. These are the tables I want to append. And I can click OK. Then you see that I have one single file that has appended them all together as what? A new query called append. So this query, I can either double click to rename it, or I could rename it from the name property right here. If you like stress a little bit, you can right click and go and look for rename before you rename it, okay? Then you see that this also has a settings icon, right? So let's assume that I should have added only corporate and home office. Consumer should not be included. I will easily come here to source, edit settings, and I can remove consumer. I can click on consumer now and use X to remove. Consumer is gone. In fact, if I want to add corporate 5 times, I can do that. Click corporate, add. Corporate again, add. Corporate again, add. Okay, you probably are thinking something now. So if you want your data to look plenty, look big somehow, This is one way for you to actually generate a long list of files. So you see, I've added corporate 5 times. Now, assuming that is a mistake, once again, right click, edit to go back and remove them, right? I can select one and hold control to select multiple, then use the X to remove and click OK, right? So right now I should have how many? I should have home office and corporate. Now, assuming that I'm done, I want to load this. You know, the singular files are not necessary for me to use. I just need the final one, which is the appended one. Then I'm going to need to make sure that when I click close and apply, only that final one is loaded. How do I do that? I need to right click on the ones I don't want to load, and I'm going to untick enable load. So I don't want to load these guys. I don't want to load this one. I only want to load the final one. So if I click close and apply now, only that final one is going to be loaded. Okay, so I believe that our time is up and we need to discuss. We need to have some serious discussions right now. So first, let me take questions. I don't think we need to, we've already gone over our normal timing. So let's try to work maybe in the next 5-10 minutes to take questions and to also discuss the way forward. So I see many people are saying that they can't access or they can't find the file on Google Classroom. So questions in 5 minutes. So this is Google Classroom. If you come to class drive folder, here is folder. Okay. So we go to Google, you should see class drive folder somewhere there. When you go to class drive folder, you are going to see the folder I'm working with. All my data is there, right? So you can use that to get the data. So how do we deal with missing blank null values in Power Query? That depends on what you want to do about it. It depends on why it is blank and why it is null. For example, you have a column, first name, middle name, and last name. For the middle name, some people's middle names are going to be blank because they don't have middle names or they did not supply their middle names. So how do you deal with that? You leave it the way it is. Now imagine the first name is blank and you know it's a required field. How do you deal with that? You go back to the source of the data and try to find out why is it omitted? What's the original thing that has to be there? And make sure it is corrected from source. So like I said, how you deal with it depends. Or maybe you have columns that are supposed to contain numbers and they are left blank. Now for your blanks, you need to use them as zeros. Now it's a different thing if you're talking about the machine build a machine learning model. And in which case, if that's what you want to do, then you are going to need to use R. So you see that in Power Query, basically, if I go back to Power Query, you see that there is R and Python there. So if you know how to use R and Python, if I go to transform, you see you have your R script and your Python script right here. So if you know how to use R and Python scripts to fill missing values, you can use the same approach using R and Python. But Power Query naturally is not going to have a special technique for dealing with missing value. It depends on what you have and why the value is missing and what you want to do about it. Okay. What's the difference between merge and append? I might have missed that part. So the difference between merge and append is this. If your data if this is your data, if your data is like this way, Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3 rows, and you have A, B, C columns. There are two ways you can increase your data. Either you add more rows, so you have 4, 5, 6. If that is the case, you are doing append. But if your data is increasing by adding more columns, you want to add D, E, F as columns, then you are doing merge, right? So my Google Drive is empty. Your class Google Drive is empty. Are you in cohort 2? Make sure you're in cohort 2. Make sure you have access to cohorts 2 Google Drive. Okay. Then, now still talking about that. So in that same Google Drive, I want to have an understanding of the commitment that you people have on ground. So if I drop videos, for example, how many people are going to watch the video before the next class? If I drop videos, how many people will watch the videos and practice before the next class? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I will. Okay, so that's good commitment. Awesome. So I'm going to drop some videos that will, touch on some areas that we don't have the time to actually touch right here inside the class. So for example, there are some very steady transformations that you do on data. Steady, right? Very common transformations. So I will record those videos, I'll drop them there, then make sure you try them out. You already have the files, so just work on them. So that by the next class, you can also have like an intro in class. Then I can have videos recorded for you to continue from there before next class as well. All right? So Ify, please type your question again. So append is for vertical and merge is for horizontal. Now, vertical and horizontal is something that confuses me until tomorrow. I must think about it. So what is vertical? This is vertical. Okay, this is horizontal. Yes, you are correct. Don't worry. In the video, I will have better explanation for you to understand the differences between the two of them. Ify, can you type your question again? So I'll see it there. Polanli, how do I join cohort 2? There's a link for that. Get in touch with DSN. My class drive folder is empty and I'm in cohort 2. How is that possible? How is that possible? Class drive folder. Is there any other person that can't see the folder in the class drive? Same here. Can you share the class drive folder here? Because people are not this. Okay. This get link or share. Get link. Only people added can open this link. Okay, let's make it. Anyway. Okay, so I just dropped the link. So I've dropped the link. You can basically use that link to get it. Maybe there is some setting I need to do. I have to try. if there's something I need to do about that. All right, so any other question? I think we should call it a day here. And we'll let you know once there are videos. I'm going to share the link, or we'll share the link with you once I drop all those videos for you. All right, everyone. In the absence of questions, I say see you in the next class. Bye. Let me go and look for Ife's question. Ife, let me go and look for a question. If you say it's loaded personal data from Excel and it has some cells with error, how do I troubleshoot that or even correct it? Your question is very long because we have to talk about dealing with errors before we be able to answer your question. So maybe the first thing I'm going to do for the video, right? So watch out for the videos I'm going to record. Okay?
Good evening. Good evening, Ahmed.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ahmed, for facilitating this section. It's been an awesome one. So for everyone asking about the data sets Ahmed used, that will be posted again in the Google Classroom. But you can always find the resources to this section in the Google Classroom. Just navigate around the stream and classroom section. You will find all data sets, resources needed for this program. So and always, Ahmed will be always available in the Google Classroom to answer your questions. So do well to ask your questions also in the Google Classroom. Learning does not stop, so continue to practice, continue to learn. It's very, very important. Get your hands dirty. That's how you get better. Get your hands dirty. It's very, very important. So thank you once again, Ahmed, for facilitating this section. It's always an awesome time. So next class also will be in the next 2 weeks.